Visit geoal.com and learn how GeoAL implements next-generation intelligence advancement technologies to aid the Department of Defense with precision and expertise analysis. GeoAL.
The new era of intelligence.
Welcome to the Veteran Business Collective podcast.
All right, we are joined today by Chris Sikes of Handyman Connections. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Good, doing real good. I actually enjoyed our little preliminary conversation we already had here. Got a little crazy for a minute, but it was good to get some laughs out. If anybody's curious, you can Google the waffle stomp and see if you can figure out what it was we were talking about. We're not going to define it now, but
I think that would probably be the best thing we did.
Yeah, not define it, you mean?
Do it in incognito mode.
Exactly.
More good advice. And I think we also hatched a new plan based on deployment experience to make real estate more affordable for investors, which we also won't get into just now.
More to come on that.
More to come on that
Stay
as the
tuned
plan.
For the next couple episodes. And
as the plan.
We'll put out pieces of the plan.
We need to let it develop fully.
That's right.
Hasn't quite percolated yet.
No.
It's your first Patreon content.
That's it. Subscribe today. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe.
Oh, man. Well, let's get right into it, man. Let's start with a day in the life of Chris with Handyman Connections, because we were supposed to start recording almost 20 minutes ago, but being a business owner, you're slam jam busy, running around like crazy, and couldn't get to the studio quite on time. So is that the norm for you?
That is the norm for me. So this morning, starts at 6 o'clock for me every single morning. Really about 5:30. Wake up, kind of get my game plan of what I think we're going to do today. Make sure my guys are equipped to do the jobs that they're going to go to customers. Just really prep it. And this morning at 6:30, I was sitting in the parking lot of the landfill ready to dump a trailer so that, I didn't have to tie up another craftsman to go take some stuff to a landfill and come back. So it's always a busy go type scenario, which is, it's how my life's been since I got out of high school and joined the military. It's just that life continues on, that early rising, late to sleep.
Yeah. Tell us about your military background.
So I was in the Army for 13 years. Joined originally as a medic in the Army National Guard. Stationed down here on Carolina Beach Road.
Oh, really? In Wilmington?
In Wilmington, yep.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Went to basic training, come back, went to AIT, got out, and I was like, you know what? I want to go active duty. So I went active. I was signed down at Fort Stewart, Georgia, and I was assigned to a air cav unit that provided medevac support for the whole post. I had a first sergeant Livingston, who was a soldier, and he was riding around the flight line one afternoon. We come back, we were getting everything done, cleaned up, and at that time I was a specialist. He said, "Specialist?" He said, "Come here." I said, "Yes, First Sergeant." He says, "What do you want to do in the Army?" About that time, there was a bunch of Apaches lining up the land over there because we shared this airfield with them. And I said, "I want to fly one of those." He said, "Have you put in your flight packet?" I said, "No, I haven't." I said, "I don't know how to do that." He says, "After PT tomorrow," he says, "you be in my office." He says, "We're going to go over there to the education center." He says, "We're going to get you signed up and get everything done." Needless to say, 2 weeks later, I took the flight aptitude test and didn't think nothing about it. And almost about 6-7 weeks later, he called me in the office. He said, "Are you ready?" I said, I don't know how to answer that question.
Ready for what? That sounds like a loaded question coming from a first sergeant,
these
right?
loaded questions in here.
Yeah. Ready for what, a
I'm
20,
always ready,
20-mile hike or what? What are you talking about?
Is this a more voluntold mission, or is this what is this? He says, so here's your 4187. He says, "You're going to Fort Rucker." He says, "You're going to one officer school." He said, "You got accepted." He says, "You passed one officer school." He says, "Then you're going to go into flight school." He says, "Make me proud." I said, "Roger that, First Sergeant," and out I went.
Wow.
Went to Warrant Officer School, walk school. That was an interesting time. Got done with that. transitioned to the other side of post and went into aviation. And I stayed in aviation for a good number of years. Got out of active duty, moved back here. Come to find out, North Carolina was one of the few National Guard units that had a Apache unit in it up in Raleigh. And so I went over to those guys, and at that time they were transitioning from the Bravo models to the Delta models, which have the big round thing on top. And I was like, all right, I'm already proficient in that. At that time, they were spinning up to go to Fort Hood to transition, get combat ready, and deploy over to Afghanistan.
Sounds like you had a pretty good first sergeant.
I did.
Yeah.
I look back
That's
at that,
awesome.
and and it was every NCO that I ever dealt with in the aviation side and non-aviation side of that. It was they were a soldier's soldier. They cared about their troops. They led, and it was a really good time.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had an NCO or staff NCO approach me like that. Usually it's, hey, Marine, you need to do this if you want to be successful in the Marine Corps. You need to go do this, you need to go do that, without really asking you what your definition of success might look like or where you might want to land. I did have an officer do that once, which was great because it ended up landing me in MARSOC. But he was a major. It wasn't a first sergeant. First sergeant, I've never had an NCO do that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I can say, a lot of that we saw, with especially in aviation units. They're very, and it's weird when you look at a attack aviation unit, a majority of your line companies are warrant officers. I mean, when we stood in formation, it was, your few officers, but it was warrant officers and then down to like staff sergeants. And that made up your Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie companies. Your Delta companies were your maintenance, which was the biggest one, and that's where you had a lot of your lower enlisted. So it was a unique, different way when you looked at that. There was CW5s to 1s, which was kind of like your private to your sergeants, and then you had your staff sergeants in there. So it was kind of odd when you saw that. A lot of brass on that side.
That's an awesome story. I'm just thinking about it. That's super cool that he ended up doing something like that had a huge positive impact on you.
Absolutely. As you always say, you never forget the ones who make the impact in that. To that day, that first sergeant Livingston, I remember him to this day.
Yeah, most of the first sergeants I remember, like about as detailed as they got with guidance was, don't get anyone pregnant this weekend, don't get arrested, don't get a DUI, and
don't
make sure you
see you this weekend.
Make sure you have a haircut before you're back on Monday. I mean, did you have a different experience, Avery?
I think I had challenges with listening to some of those things. So I didn't retain it, if that was being said.
Fair enough.
Challenges. It's a good way to
So
put it.
are you self-identifying as a leadership challenge, Avery?
Maybe.
To a first sergeant, anyway?
Yes, I would say that. I find shaving every day to be the equivalent of cutting your grass every day. It's just a very strange habit to me.
I can tell.
Kind of unnecessary.
I mean, I can really tell. I mean,
Definitely.
He's left it behind.
yeah, you definitely. To this day, you don't mow that grass at all.
I pretty much do it the same way I handle the grass, like just frequent enough for the city to not send me a letter. That's pretty much it.
That's one way to put it.
It's a good approach.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
So how long have you been a business owner?
So I've been a business owner for about the last 7 years. And really in and out of that, I worked in plumbing, kind of got started in my own plumbing business. And then I got out of that, and I, for some reason, decided that I wanted to go to work for the VA.
Ooh.
Wow.
Okay.
What an experience. And, up until probably about a year and a half ago, I was the patient advocate and the customer service person for the Wilmington Clinic. And, you know, we think the VA has challenges now that we see on the outside. You should see it from the inside. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. The VA does a lot of great things, but they also do a lot of bad things. As with any government entity, it's not effective unless it's pushed. I always refer to the VA as a wheelbarrow. It doesn't work until it's pushed.
That's a
And
good analogy.
that's kind of how I saw it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to fix it. Well, one person can't fix a large organization.
No, bureaucracy is way too big.
You know, the times that I was there, you know, there was a lot of stuff that got fixed when Secretary Wilkie was in there, which many people don't realize, but Secretary Wilkie had ties to this area.
Mm-hmm.
He was down here quite often. He took a vested interest in that Fayetteville VA medical system because that was his hometown.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he was born and raised at. Or I don't think he was born there, but that's where he kind of grew up at. And so we benefited a lot from that. We got a lot of great services around here. But then again, there was still a lot of stuff that needed to get cleaned up. And finally, I just said, you know what? When I wake up and I have a hard time coming to work because I hate going there, it's time for me to have a career change. And I
Yeah.
said, you know what? I said, it's not right for my fellow veterans to have to deal with this because I have a chip on my shoulder, because I'm frustrated that I can't fix this. Nobody fixes it. They turn a blind eye to it. And I said, you know what? It's time for me to go.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I just now, or recently, I've had my first issue with the VA, which was scheduling a dental appointment.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up having someone contact me this morning to schedule an appointment. And they just called to do the appointment. Hey, you know, we have an opening September 22nd. And then I remember thinking, like, did they just say September?
Yeah, it's like it's no.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I remember asking, like, I thought there was some community care thing or something. Or she was like, oh, yeah, there is. So they're going to call me back randomly one day. But it was nuts to me.
Yeah, that's it. It's like I said, it doesn't work unless you push it.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, my physicals for the last 3 years at the VA have consisted of a doctor calling me on the phone and saying, hey, this is your annual physical. Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
I think so, but isn't that your call? Like, don't you need to poke me, prod me,
Isn't
listen
that
to
your
my heart and
decision?
lungs and tell me if I'm okay or not? Like, isn't that the idea of a physical? If I had like a major issue, I'd have called you and scheduled an appointment. This is the annual physical. Well, we just don't have enough people to do in-person physicals, so we're just doing them over the phone. You know, if you have anything major going on, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
that
I mean,
seems
it's
really, really
It's
inefficient.
great. I mean, I remember when I was going through and get my disability, you know, Competent Pen, I went to a doctor's visit, and it was like this, and it was, you know, I had issues with my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, all right, we're good. And I'm like, well, don't you need to see me? He's like, no, I've seen everything. I was like, dude, you're pretty cool. Because you can not only see through this table, but you can also see through my shoes and know the issues that I'm having. And I'm like, you know, man, it's not. But, you know, it's like you were saying with dental, most people don't realize you have eligibility and criteria for the VA. Then you have an own set of eligibility and criteria and classes in dental.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's its own service, its own whole weird thing in the VA.
What is something, or maybe some things, that if you just ran it for a day, you would change to improve how it performs or the service it provides? Or
The getting in timely appointments and scheduling.
Not waiting
That's-
till September for
not
a
waiting till September.
an
I mean,
appointment.
it was a bit much.
if people ran the government like they ran a small business, it would be so much more effective.
We wouldn't be $20 trillion in debt.
Exactly. We wouldn't have the issues that we have now.
Well, the difference is you're accountable for your own finances.
Absolutely.
Right? As a small business owner,
right.
if you don't have money in the bank, you don't make payroll. Your employees go somewhere else, you don't pay your mortgage anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The government has no incentive to pay their bills, do anything efficiently.
It's taxes,
They just
yeah.
steal more from everybody else to keep covering the check.
That was our biggest thing, and we still have problems with that with New Hanover, which is now Navant. Guys were getting turned into collections because the VA just paying, and they're like, you know what? Too bad. They would literally send them a letter and saying, hey, maybe you need to go, help us, help you, but you're ultimately responsible for this bill. Even though we had authorizations, we sent authorization. I'm fighting the same issue right now.
That's crazy.
That the VA sent Novant an authorization. Novant called me to schedule the appointment. I went to go see it. I was like, everything good? They're like, yep. And now I'm getting a $720 bill. And I'm like, well, you had the authorization. Oh, well, we can't find it anymore. And it's just like, really? You're the one who called me. You wouldn't schedule me unless I had a consult, or a referral. I said, it just, once again, and that's a Novant issue, really.
Yeah.
But they've cleaned a lot of that stuff up.
Well, we could spend a month.
Oh man, we could
running the VA into the dirt and how inefficient they are. But let's get back to Handyman Connections for a minute. So
absolutely,
I was let's back up a little bit. So I've known you for what, 2 months now? I think we met
2-3 months.
2-3 months ago when you came to your first VBC event
in February.
Yep, and then we actually got the chance to work together for the first time about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. You came out and helped one of my companies on a job, and then you called me this week to come take a look at something you had going on. And I learned something very interesting about your company that my brain wouldn't have made the connection just based on the name, Handyman Connections. So to me, when I think of handyman, I think of like punch list stuff, like fix the front porch, like some of the more advanced honey-do list things that most guys either don't have the skill to do or they don't want to do. And I was surprised to find out you do full-on renovations.
Absolutely.
Like you had a crew in there completely demoing an entire bathroom for a full rebuild. Talk to me about what all you do, because it's not obvious on the surface.
Yeah, we do literally everything. I have crews that one day can be, simply changing out a light switch or hanging and painting or a mirror. The next day they could be in completely demoing and redoing a complete bathroom. We do everything but really crawl on roofs. I tell people we're too fat and we're too old to be getting up on the roof.
I was going to ask if it was that or if it was the 8-foot ladder insurance threshold.
Nah, we kind of beat that a little bit, but don't listen to that insurance agent. No, we just don't really get up on that. We've got some great mutual friends that do very good at roofing, and so that's what we refer all that stuff out to that. But I've literally have hung paintings and mirrors and whatnot for people who just can't do it to, flooring all in a matter of 3 hours,
And actually, I just remembered you helped us with a bid over in Brunswick County.
Brunswick County, yeah.
Which I just found out we won.
Yep.
And so that's another job that we'll be working together on.
Working with your brother-in-law trying to figure out a schedule.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's been great. I'm glad you came to a meeting and got involved, because trying to find people that can just show up and do quality work has been such a challenge, absolutely. And you guys are all over it.
And it's an interesting fate of how I got into this business. Back in August of last year, I was working for a local company called FilmWorks. And I was out on the PGA Golf Tour, and I ended up getting pneumonia and COVID.
Wow.
At the same time?
As you back up. So
this is a tight space in here.
Yeah. So I come home, and I was, just toughed out. I was like, all right, I'll just, whatever. So finally, on that Saturday, I got home on a Wednesday. That Saturday, I told my fiance Heather, I said, you need to take me to Medac. I said, I can't deal with this anymore. So I go to Medac, and I'm laying up on the table, curled up in the fetal position, fever's coming and going, and, she was like, oh, well, you've got COVID. I'm like, okay. I said, well, I think I got pneumonia. Yeah, you got a little bit of pneumonia. Here's some prednisone or whatever. Well, there wasn't even enough prednisone in this bottle to do a third of the way she wanted to try to taper it. The next day, so that was Saturday. So Sunday night, she calls the ambulance because I just couldn't hardly breathe. I get there. They take me to Pender, and they did an X-ray, and I literally had about a spot that was about the size of my fist right here of what I was breathing out of. My lungs were solid white from fluid and everything else.
You were almost dead.
That's what he told me. He said if you would have waited another, couple hours, he said you may have had another day or so left in you. He said somebody would have found you. He says because you're not perfusing. At that time, my O2 stats were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 65, 70. So off to New Hanover I go, and I spent 22 days in that hospital.
Wow.
At one point in time, I was on close to 50 liters of oxygen that was being, high-flow oxygen that was being pumped through a nasal cannula and down there. And I'm telling you, it was the worst feeling. I told a doctor that I had, pulmonologist, and he was a major in the Army still. And I told him, I said, Doc, I'd much rather be shot and blown up than not being able to breathe. I said, because you can mask that pain. There's not a pill you can take to breathe. I couldn't walk from me to you, Avery, without being out of breath. And that's with a nasal cannula and a breather on. So, needless to say, when I got out of the hospital after 22 days, the second day I was out of the hospital, they said, oh, we don't need you anymore if film works. I said, you know what? I said, I'm tired of working for somebody else. I want to work for myself. So I started looking into franchises. A really great friend of mine, Jeff Moss, who owns College Hunks.
Yeah, I know Jeff.
He's a member of the VBC also. I started talking to him. I talk to him all the time. He's a Cobra pilot. His son is a real pilot who flies Apaches.
Is that how it is in the Army?
That's how it is in the Army.
The Apache pilots are the real pilots?
That's the real pilots.
I wonder where that was going.
Always joke with Jeff about that.
Oh, man, that's funny. So the Marine Corps has a thing like that, but it's between the cargo pilots and then the Cobra pilots.
Yeah.
And the Army has it even within the attack categories.
So which one is the real pilot?
That's
Apaches?
The Apache, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good to know.
I'll have to remember that for next time I talk to Jeff.
Where do fighter jets pilots fall in this spectrum?
The Army, we don't recognize those. So
Gotcha.
that's only like, maybe Navy, Air Force type stuff.
Fair enough. I was
Yeah,
just
so
wondering how this all shook out.
Yeah, that's where,
Fast movers stick in the movies like
that's
Top
right,
Gun
yeah,
and
that's-
stuff. They're
yeah,
not even
that's-
real, right?
That's it. So, he hooked me up with a franchise development coach who I spent a lot of time with, really kind of getting to know me and figuring out where I wanted to go. What did I want to do? And she presented 3 options to me as franchises and says, look at these 3. And I did due diligence on that, and Handyman Connection was the one that stood out. I looked at a garage door repair business, and I was like, how many people do you know that are constantly replacing garage doors or having an issue with a garage door other than,
Other than Avery?
Other than Avery,
I could use
where you
that
got
right
somebody
now.
who steals a garage door.
I think I've called a garage door repairman once in my life. So, yeah.
And, it was that, and then it was a fitness machine repair, and I was like, oh, man, that sounds really great. You don't see that everywhere. Then I started really looking at that and analyzing that and thinking about it, and I was like, how many times are you going to call somebody over to fix your NordicTrack or your treadmill before you just say, you know what, screw this thing, it's now a coat rack.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or the calls are maybe probably warranty calls where you're being paid a bare minimum from the
Yeah, so I was like,
manufacturer
you know what,
for the
that
service
doesn't
call.
make sense. So I started asking people that I know, and I'm like, hey, do you know, handyman stuff? Talk to me about handyman. They're like, oh, do you know somebody? Man, I need something. Everybody I call, man, they never show up, or, you know, they're busy, they're booked out. And everybody I talked to and I pitched this idea to, they were like, man, that's great.
Yeah.
You know, went through the franchise process and realized that this was a fit for us. So we started this, Heather and myself, and you know, we opened our doors February 8th.
Of this year?
Of this year, February 8th of this
Okay.
year, we opened our doors, and once we started running, we haven't stopped.
How big of a footprint did you start with? So when you
well,
launched, was it just you doing stuff, or did you start with
literally, it
employees?
was me and Heather,
Okay.
and I had 2 guys that worked for me.
Okay, so you started with 2 employees,
2
from
employees,
day
and
one.
now I'm up to 6.
Okay.
And I'm literally trying to, my goal is to put 2 more on this month, because we've
Man,
got
that's
to work.
fantastic.
A month over from February to March, we doubled our sales.
Awesome. Good for
And
you, man.
it's been phenomenal.
Now, how much of that would you attribute to efforts from the franchisor, the franchise system? You know, like, do they do marketing for you, or do they have a call center for you, or is
Yes.
it because
So
you're out
there's
hustling?
a lot
or-
of support that's in a franchise, and everybody always asks me, why do you get into a franchise? And I'm like, you know, a franchise is a proven system. Obviously, if there's more than 2 or 3 and they're successful, then it works.
Yeah.
They've got everything figured out. We've got a marketing team. We've got a IT team. You've got everybody there. So if I'm having an issue with marketing, I pick up the phone and call marketing and say, hey, look, what's going on with this? What do we need to do with that? Oh, don't worry about it. I got it. You focus on your business. Instead of me trying to figure out, all right, who do I got to call for SEO? Who do I got to call for this or that? They've got all of these partners that do all of this stuff.
That's
IT. You know, we've got an IT guy. Just call him, say, hey, we're having issues with this. All right, yeah, we got it. But you know, it's all there.
So you're a couple months into it. Your sales are doubling month over month. You've tripled the size of your team in just a couple of months. So I guess it'd be fair to say that you're happy with your decision to go the franchise route.
Absolutely.
And I ask because, you know, a lot of veterans are interested in business ownership and entrepreneurship and that sort of thing, and they just don't know the right way to go. Like, you explored a lot of different paths, and so it's really cool to be able to hear from somebody that's gone down that road and franchised, and you're kicking the crap out of it on the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's a, you know, a lot of franchisors look at military personnel as the perfect candidates because they follow the direction, they follow the systems, the guidance. And another thing too is there's a lot of discounts that franchisors give off the franchise fees for military. Handyman Connection was one of those.
okay.
They recognize that as a token of your service. You know, they do that because they are proven. That's why you look at VetFran and a lot of these other, you know, veteran franchising things, and they tell you, you know, this is what they're after. You know, the leadership, everything that we learn in the military applies in the civilian world, and they're very successful at it, particularly in franchising.
Nice. 2 quick questions.
Okay.
One, what area do you cover? And the second one, you mentioned VetFran. Can you explain more about what that is?
Yes, so I cover Pender and New Hanover, and Brunswick County is kind of our territory.
Okay.
And VetFran is a organization that they take a lot of these franchisors and, you know, kind of bring them together and say, are you military friendly? And they just kind of put that, whether it's I forgot the term that they use for it, but some kind of, like a star rating system.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're very military friendly, or they're not so much, or
Yeah, like do you
also-
offer a discount on your franchise fee?
Exactly.
Any other incentives
Discount,
to attract?
what's your percentage of people who are, former military people, how successful they've been? There's just a whole lot of stuff that they go in.
Okay.
And it's for somebody to kind of look at it and to do research. I always tell people so there's a franchise literally for everything nowadays. Everything.
Yeah.
And I tell people, look at what's out there, and do your due diligence, do your research, and say, is it right for me? So I owned a ATV repair business before that, and I thought I was making pretty good money in that, but it was me. It was only me, and I had to stop what I was doing to answer the phone to talk to a customer, order parts, figure out marketing, figure out how to do this, do that, do all of this. And how long does it take you to make a profit in a business that you started by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
On average, they say close to 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Believe it or not, the first month of business, we put $330 to our bottom line.
Nice.
We had a profit of $330 in the first month of business.
That's excellent.
That's crazy because I know what the startup costs are, even in
Exactly.
something as simple as hand tools and things like that. I mean, that
Yeah.
all just adds up like crazy. Franchise
does.
fees,
It
that
does.
first month worth of payroll that you gotta have in the account.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you.
Okay.
We're getting close to running out of time on this session, but you've tripled your staff during the same amount of time, where every other business in town can't find anyone that wants to show up to work. How are you overcoming some of these challenges that everybody else is facing in the labor market right now?
A lot of it has to do with leadership and when I talk to people. I come from a blue collar background, so my workers are blue collar, so I understand how they think. Blue collar workers are not going on places like Indeed and Monster and all that. When you say resume to them, you might as well talk something else. But when you start talking applications and saying, hey, look, this is what I want to do for you, you're a hell of a guy that can build a hell of a table, but you don't like going out and finding your next job. You don't like finding all of that. Well, look, I've got the office staff for that. I want you to focus on doing what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's done that. The other part that I do with this is I build my team and I build leadership in my team. I sit down with them and say, what's your goal? What do you want to do this month? Okay? I want to make, and I'm just going to throw this out, I want to make $1,300 a month. All right? Or $1,300 a week. I said, okay, what do we need to do to get to that? So we said, all right, well, we got to have so many estimates, this job size, this and that. And I said, okay. And I looked at our office staff and I said, let's make sure that John has this. Let's make sure that this is in there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is that. And I had one guy.
Sounds like you're taking kind of that approach that first sergeant took with you early on in your career. Huh?
Absolutely.
Just looking out for your guys.
The other part of that I'm very fortunate to have, out of 6 guys, 4 of them served in the military.
Awesome. That's so
4
cool.
of them. And I have one guy that tells me, he said, I've never had somebody sit down and say, what do you want to do? How can I help you be better? And there's this thing that's called the circle of trust, or the circle of protection, or whatever. And as pack animals, we are better in numbers. And if everybody is working as a cohesive unit, then we can fend off all of those dangers that's out there. But it's the moment that you start going out by that and be like, you know what, screw the boss people, we're going to do that. That's when stuff starts breaking down. Mm-hmm. And, I've overcome that. I tell all of our, corporate franchise staff, I was like, I don't work in the office. I'm out in the field. I will crawl under a house, on a house, and on top of a house. all in a day's work. I'm meeting with a customer and I'm talking with a customer, and and I'm showing up on a job site, and you're like, oh, well, here's the owner of a company that's here. What, you're not somebody that sits in an office that's out there. If I have a problem, I can pick up the phone and call you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
That's awesome.
That sounds like military leadership 101 in action.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to guys that are either getting out or they're already out, military veterans that are thinking about making the leap into business ownership, maybe through a franchising route? They're hesitant. They're not sure if they're scared. They're not sure if they've got what it takes. What would you say to them?
So become that 1%. Don't become that 99%. That 99% is the people who follow. Be that 1% leader. And in that 1%, there's going to be some hard decisions. There's going to be some hard times. There's going to be everything. But do your homework. Do your due diligence when you're looking at that. They've got these friend development coaches. They're free. They don't cost a thing because they're paid by the franchise that actually, they're kind of almost like recruiting agents. Okay?
Okay.
But go and talk to them. Look at what's out there. Talk and do your due diligence. Pick up the phone. That's part of franchising, is picking up the phone and calling these franchise owners and say, all right, the franchise disclosure document says this. What are you seeing? Is that true?
Do you have to be rich to open a business? Do you have to have a ton of money?
Hey,
Well, these
I
guys that are
agree.
getting out after 4 years, maybe they didn't save a lot because they, bought the giant truck when they were a PFC or something. Can they still do it?
Yeah, everybody can do it. All you have to do is be able to get the right funding, SBA loans, all of that stuff that's out there. As long as you haven't wrecked your credit with that, then yes, you can do it. And it took 110,000 or so, I think, for me, and that's with capital that's built into the business.
Okay. That's
You know.
establishing your operating account.
Yeah,
Nice.
you don't have to go out there. We're not opening at McDonald's. You don't have to be on the corner of College and Market.
Right.
You don't have to buy all of this equipment and all of this other stuff. For me, I'm very lucky that I hire craftsmen that have their own tools, so I'm not having to buy a bunch of tools from them. They have their stuff, and I compensate them well in that.
Very cool. Well, we're out of time, so we're going to do our normal wrap-up thing, which is me and Avery always like to ask if you had, one or two pieces of advice you wanted to leave on the table for our audience related to anything we talked about or didn't talk about, whatever you want to drop.
So if you read a lot of business books like I do, there's a new one out there that I've really enjoyed, and it's not really a new one, but there's a lot of YouTube series on it, and it's called Leaders Eat Last.
Mm-hmm.
And that's by Simon Sinek.
Yep.
Okay.
And there's a lot of great stuff. There's 45-minute segments. They actually have episodes and classes that they do on this. And there's a lot of principle that's in there that comes from the military that translates over to that. Prime example is the name of the book, Leaders Eat Last. When we all remember when we were in there, it was that junior NCO or that private that ate first. Your junior NCOs, your senior NCOs, and then your officers.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And that's how, why is that? Because your alphas, your alpha males, your ones that are leading, is protecting, is doing the work, is doing all of that, they typically eat first in the pack, right? And that's it. Your alphas are not your leaders. They're not your that. Same principle goes into business. Who's the last one to get paid in a business?
The owner.
The owner.
Always.
Exactly.
Yep.
As
If
I
there's
say,
anybody left
leaders
at the end of the
eat
year,
leaders eat last, and leaders get paid last. Because it's more important for us to take care of our people who take care of us.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. And that actually included our second question was, do you have any book recommendations?
Yeah,
So you killed
that
them
is
both
that.
in one shot.
There was a quote that was in there, and I always write these down because I always keep quotes in my pocket that I always think of.
Lay it on us.
In the military, we give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so others may gain. In business, we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. Why is this backwards? Why in business do we not give medals or bonuses to people that sacrifice themselves?
This sounds like a whole other episode.
That's
that's
something
right there.
to stop and think of. And it's the other part too is leadership comes at a cost. You never get to do less work when you get more senior. You have to do more work, and the more work you do, you have to look out for others.
True, very true. Well, this has been great. I wish we had another 2 hours. Given the growth rate of your business and the things we touched on only for a few minutes here and there, we've got to have you back.
Absolutely.
Maybe like
I'd
in
love to be
6 months and,
Be back,
just
yeah.
check in. I mean,
That would be
Oh
awesome.
yeah, yep.
see how big the Handyman Connection empire is at that point.
That is my goal is to create an empire and to create a thing of where people say, yeah, I want to work for that guy.
Well, we're honored to have you involved with the VBC.
Absolutely.
Thank you for participating and joining. We appreciate you coming down today on the podcast. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, whether they want to work for you, they want to hire you, what's the best way to get in touch with Chris Sikes? And
So you can give us a call in our office. Our number is 910-970-4200, or you can go to handymanconnection.com/Wilmington, and you will see everything on our website. Obviously, we've got all of our social media, Facebook and Instagram and all that other stuff. OnlyFans is coming soon.
Nice. That K-gate, I like it.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in today, man, and you better get back to work.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Later.
Thanks for checking out the VBC podcast.